All right, I just got off of my wife's podcast, and it was probably the best podcast I've ever done. And it's so interesting to interact with someone in a completely different way because it's my wife. So here's something funny. Before we got on and like I was chit-chatting with her because we did it through Zoom, even though we're in the same house. And then when we were chit-chatting, she's like, actually, get off and come back on so I could treat you like an actual podcast guest like everyone else. So then I got back on and we treated it like I was a guest coming on her podcast. And it was a great experience because she approaches her interviews in a really unique way. First of all, she does these little meditation activations in it that are super powerful, and it gets you into different spaces of consciousness. But the other thing was the way she asked me questions and prompted me allowed me to express things in ways that I haven't before. And since we just recorded it, it's probably not going to be out now, but I'll share the links wherever I can, whenever I can, once that comes out. So part of the things that like blew my mind was I had a few realizations. And one of them was she was asking me about my book Soswick, and the theme came up of how every character you write about, when you're writing a story, every character is an aspect of you, some kind of mirror of you. And it's not necessarily things that only exist within you, like parts of yourself. It could be like ideal versions of you, or it could be even negative aspects of you that manifest as the characters you write about. So you see this with every author who writes stories. Every character in the story is some aspect of themselves. And a lot of times it manifests in a very indirect way. And I didn't realize this when I was writing Soswick. I had no idea. But that's what I did. Like Soswick is very much like me. But also Jenny, the female character, is also like an aspect of me. Goa, Soswick's mentor, is an aspect of me. Let me explain. So Soswick, he is a shaman in training, and he gets himself into a lot of situations that he's unfamiliar with. A lot of the environments that he finds himself in is completely unfamiliar. So he has to go through like the self-doubt, the fears, work through a lot of that. And he also grew up as a slave because this force called the Guard enslaved the whole civilization that he lives in. And he had to undergo this deep programming and then use his shamanic training to counter that programming. So that's a part of it too. And he does this under the tutelage of Goa. And Goa is like, it's almost like Gandalf, but an even more lighthearted version of Gandalf. Like, picture Gandalf and Rafiki combined, kind of like that. And Goa is his mentor. And with Goa, you don't quite know the extent of his powers, like Gandalf. So this represents like my higher self, or my soul self, however you want to say it, because it knows a lot more than the human knows. And actually the extent of its power and knowledge and wisdom is unknown. You really don't know what it's capable of, okay? And then Jenny, for example, she was a lawyer in Los Angeles who quits her job to do some soul searching. So Jenny represents like the human aspect of me, of all of us, who we go through a normal life, but we feel like we don't quite fit in. So then we search for something different. So that's what Jenny represents. And all of these are different aspects, not only of myself, but of every single person. Because there's archetypes that we all embody, that we all have within us. And this is why I love the power of story, because when you write stories, there's something magical that you tap into these deep archetypes and express these deep archetypes. So the people who read it, they activate those archetypes within them. And that's why it's so moving. When you read something like Lord of the Rings, it's so moving because you, even if you're not consciously aware of it, you subconsciously recognize all of the characters as archetypes within yourself. And it leads to greater awareness, higher awareness, self-awareness, self-discovery, knowledge of self through storytelling. This is the reason why so many religions speak in parables and stories. Mythology is stories because it activates this deep knowing within our psyche. Okay? There's that part. And then there's stories tell higher truths. Similar, but different. So that's why instead of listing out facts, religions, spiritual teachers, even philosophers will tell stories because it allows you to glimpse beyond the veil of pure logic and facts and glimpse higher truths and then be able to integrate that in your consciousness. But when it comes to the aspects of self, I realized that on a deeper level, like, wow, I was really tuning into these archetypes within myself while writing this and then expressing it. And when you read it, you're able to integrate and heal and upgrade those archetypes within yourself. That's the magic of reading fiction. And that's the main point. And I thank my wife for bringing that up and prompting me to verbalize that in the podcast interview. So if, I don't know when you're seeing this, but I'll link to it wherever I can, that podcast interview, or keep your eyes out for it. It was the best podcast that I've done. And my wife held a great space and she asked me the perfect questions for me to articulate this stuff. And then this book, Soswick, there's so much to it. Even I wrote this thing and I'm finding new dimensions of it every day. It's wild. So I'll link to Soswick as well, and you can check it out through the link in my bio too. But that's what I wanted to talk about. How stories are aspects of self. When you write it, you familiarize yourself and work through it, but also when you read it, you activate those archetypal aspects of self. Fiction's magical. Don't underestimate it, all right? Sending you all lots of love, all right? Bye, everyone.